Hello, today in the third lecture of Politics of Planned Development, we shall discuss major outcomes. Of the three objectives that were identified in independent India, the third objective of economic development to ensure well-being of all proved most difficult to realize. Land reforms did not take place effectively in most part of the country. Political power remained in the hands of the land-owning classes, and industrialists continued to benefit and thrive while poverty did not reduce much. The early initiatives for planned development were at best realizing the goals of economic development of the country and well-beings of all its citizens. The inability to take significant steps in this direction in the very first stage was to become a political problem. Those who benefited from unequal development soon became politically powerful and made it even more difficult to move in the desired direction. The next point is foundations of India's economic growth. An assessment of the outcomes of this early phase of planned development must begin by acknowledging the fact that in this period the foundations of India's future economic growth were laid. Some of the largest developmental projects in India's history were undertaken during this period. These included mega dams like Bhakhra Nangal and Hirakund for irrigation and power generation. Some of the heavy industries in the public sector, steel plants, oil refineries, manufacturing units, defense production, etc., were started during this period. Infrastructure for transport and communication was improved substantially. Of late, some of these mega projects have come in for a lot of criticism. Yet, much of the later economic growth, including that by the private sector, may not have been possible in the absence of these foundations. Now, let us talk about the land reforms. In the agrarian sector, this period witnessed a serious attempt at land reforms. Perhaps the most significant and successful of these was the abolition of the colonial system of Jamindari. This bold act not only released land from the clutches of a class that had little interest in agriculture, it also reduced the capacity of the landlords to dominate politics. Attempts at consolidation of land, bringing small pieces of land together in one place so that the farm size could become viable for agriculture, were also fairly successful. But the other two components of land reforms were much less successful. Though the laws were made to put an upper limit or ceiling to how much agriculture land one person could own, people with excess land managed to evade the law. Similarly, the tenants who worked in someone else's land were given greater legal security against evictions. But this provision was rarely implemented. It was not easy to turn these well meaning policies on agriculture into genuine and effective action. This could happen only if the rural landless poor were mobilized. But the landowners were very powerful and wielded considerable political influence. Therefore, many proposals for land reforms were either not translated into laws or, when made into laws, they remained only on papers. This shows that economic policy is part of actual political situation in the society. It also shows that in spite of good wishes of some top leaders, the dominant social groups would always effectively control policy making and implementation. Next point we want to discuss is Green Revolution. In the face of the prevailing food crisis, the country was clearly vulnerable to external pressures and dependent on food aid, mainly from the United States. The United States in turn pushed the India to change its economic policies. Government adopted a new strategy for agriculture in order to ensure food sufficiency. Instead of the earlier policy of giving more support to the areas and the farmers that were lagging behind, now it was decided to put more resources into those areas which already had irrigation and those farmers who were already well off. The argument was that those who already had the capacity could help increase production rapidly in the short run. Thus, the government offered high yielding variety seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and better irrigation at high subsidized price. The government also gave a guarantee to buy the produce of the farmers at a given price. This was the beginning of what was called the Green Revolution. The rich peasants and the large landholders were the major beneficiaries of the process. The Green Revolution delivered only a moderate agricultural growth, mainly a rise in wheat production, and raised the availability of food in the country, but increased polarization between the classes and the region. Some regions like Punjab, Haryana, and western Uttar Pradesh became agriculturally prosperous, while others remained backward. The Green Revolution had two other effects. One was that in many parts the stark contrast between the poor peasantry and the landlords produced conditions favorable for left-wing organization to organize the poor peasants. Secondly, the Green Revolution also resulted in the rise of what is called the middle peasant sections. These were farmers with medium-sized land holdings who benefited from the changes and soon emerged politically influential in many parts of the country. Now let us discuss last point, later developments. The story of development in India took a significant turn from the end of the 1960s. After Nehru's death, the Congress system encountered difficulties. Indira Gandhi emerged as a popular leader. She decided to further strengthen the role of the state in controlling and directing the economy. The period from 1967 onward witnessed many new restrictions on private industry. 14 private banks were nationalized. The government announced many pro-poor programs. These changes were accompanied by an ideological tilt towards the socialist policies. This emphasis generated heated debates within the country among political parties and also among the experts. However, the consensus for a state led economic development did not last forever. Planning did continue, but its salience was significantly reduced. Between 1950 and 1980, the Indian economy grew at a sluggish per annum rate of 3 to 3.5%. In view of the prevailing inefficacy and corruption in some public sector enterprises and the not so positive role of the bureaucracy in economic development, the public opinion in the country lost the faith in initially placed in many of these institutions. Such lack of public faith led the policymakers to reduce the importance of the state in India's economy from the 1980s onward. With this we come to end of the chapter. Thanks for being a good listener.